The sound of cartilage breaking
This is over.
echoed
Do
through the
not contact
crowded
me
bus
again.
stop. Madison Brooks collapsed onto the concrete, blood
Why are you
streaming
doing
from
this?
her
I don't
nose and
understand.
soaking her white shirt crimson. Preston Maxwell towered above her, his Nike sneakers still raised, traces of blood visible on the leather. "Taste my knee, scholarship trash," he snarled, while dozens of phones captured every brutal second. But the strangest thing wasn't the violence itself. It was Madison's smile, her lips curving upward through the blood, as if everything was unfolding exactly as planned. 10, 9, 8, she whispered, counting down to something Preston couldn't understand. In a few seconds, he would learn why Madison Brooks was smiling while bleeding on cold pavement, and by then, it would be far too late. If this story about justice and revenge resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Every like and comment helps us bring more powerful stories to light. Have you ever witnessed or experienced bullying? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters, and together we can make a difference. The October afternoon at Westbrook's Central Bus Station carried the usual chaos of after-school rush hour. Students clustered in groups, commuters checked their phones, elderly passengers waited patiently on benches. Madison had chosen this location carefully. 3 security cameras covered overlapping angles. The bank's ATM camera faced directly toward the bus schedule board, and the coffee shop's glass windows provided a perfect viewing gallery. She'd been standing there for 12 minutes, backpack positioned just right, when Preston arrived with his usual crew. Jackson Reed flanked his left, all 6 feet 2 inches of entitled muscle. Derek Stone held his phone ready on the right, perpetually documenting Preston's conquests for social media glory. They moved through the crowd like sharks through water, students instinctively stepping aside. Madison didn't move. She kept her eyes on her phone screen, scrolling through what appeared to be homework assignments. Her fingers occasionally brushed against the silver bracelet on her wrist. 2 letters engraved in delicate script. SB. Most people wouldn't notice such a small detail. Preston certainly didn't as he approached, his Letterman jacket gleaming under the afternoon sun. "Well, well, little scholarship mouse thinks she owns the whole bus stop." Preston's voice carried that particular tone of someone who'd never heard the word no in his 18 years of existence. His father sat on the school board, his mother ran 3 charity foundations, and his trust fund could buy most people's houses outright. Madison looked up slowly, her brown eyes meeting his blue ones without flinching. "Public property, Preston. Even poor kids get to use it." Her voice stayed steady, almost bored, which made his jaw tighten. People didn't talk back to Preston Maxwell. They certainly didn't sound dismissive when they did. The confrontation had been building for 6 months, though Preston didn't know the real timeline. He thought Madison Brooks had transferred to Westbrook Academy in September. Another charity case taking up space meant for legacy students. He didn't know she'd been watching him since March, documenting everything, waiting for exactly the right moment. Jackson stepped closer, his shadow falling across Madison's face. "Preston's talking to you, scholarship. Show some respect." His breath smelled like energy drinks and privilege, a combination that would have intimidated most students. Madison just adjusted her backpack straps, the movement revealing something unusual. A military-grade phone case, the kind war correspondents used in conflict zones. "Respect is earned," Madison said quietly, her fingers dancing across her phone screen. To observers, she looked like she was nervously texting. In reality, she was activating the multi-directional recording app, the one that automatically uploaded to 3 separate cloud servers every 30 seconds. The app showed 47 files already stored, 6 months of evidence meticulously catalogued. Preston's face darkened. He wasn't used to defiance, especially from someone so far beneath his social station. You know what happened to the last 3 people who disrespected me? His voice dropped lower, more menacing. They're not around anymore to tell the story. Madison's slight smile flickered across her face. There it was, the admission she'd been waiting for. Jessica Martinez, Tommy Rodriguez, and Sophia Brooks. 3 students who'd stood up to Preston Maxwell. 3 students who'd ended their own lives after systematic campaigns of destruction. The school called them tragedies. Madison called them murders. Speaking of people who aren't around, Madison said, her voice carrying surprising strength, how's your batting average this year? 3 for 3? The implications hung heavy in the autumn air. Derek's camera hand wavered slightly. Jackson glanced nervously at Preston, recognizing dangerous territory. Preston grabbed Madison's phone, yanking it from her hands with enough force to seem aggressive, but not enough to technically count as assault. He'd perfected this move through practice. The device clattered onto the pavement, screen down. "Oops," he said with mock innocence. "Butterfingers." Madison didn't bend to retrieve it. Instead, she pulled out a small notebook from her jacket pocket, the kind detectives used at crime scenes. She flipped it open to a page covered in neat handwriting. 3 names topped the list: SB, JM, TR. Below each were dates, incidents, evidence markers. Preston's eyes narrowed as he recognized the initials. "What is this?" He snatched at the notebook, but Madison pulled it back, tucking it safely into her jacket's inner pocket. The movement was smooth, practiced, like someone who'd trained for this exact scenario. "Insurance," she replied simply. Then louder, ensuring the growing crowd of onlookers could hear clearly. "Just like the security footage from March 15th, when you destroyed Jessica's art portfolio. Or April 22nd, when you posted those photos of Tommy. Or May 3rd, when you sent those messages to my sister." The last word hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Preston's confident smirk faltered for just a second. "Your sister?" Madison reached up and touched the silver bracelet, her fingers tracing the engraved letters. "Sophia Brooks. You remember her, don't you? The girl who had everything going for her until you decided she needed to learn her place. Full scholarship to Princeton, perfect grades. A future that threatened your sense of superiority." The crowd had grown larger now, phones raised and recording from every angle. An elderly man on the bench had put down his newspaper, watching intently. The barista from the coffee shop pressed against the window, her hand hovering over her phone. Madison had turned the bus stop into a courtroom, and Preston was suddenly the one on trial. "You're her sister?" Preston's voice cracked slightly, the first sign of genuine concern breaking through his arrogance. "But your last name? I legally changed it after she died. After you killed her." Madison's voice remained calm, but her eyes blazed with 6 months of suppressed rage. "Did you think you could destroy 3 lives and face no consequences? Did you think money and connections would protect you forever?" Preston's hand clenched into a fist. The careful control he'd maintained started cracking. "Sophia killed herself. That had nothing to do with me." But his voice lacked conviction, especially with dozens of witnesses recording every word. Madison pulled out a folded paper from her backpack, worn from being read countless times. "Her suicide note says otherwise. Should I read it out loud? The part where she details everything you did? The fake photos you spread? The messages telling her to kill herself? The part where she names you specifically as the reason she couldn't go on?" The specially designed phone case had protected Madison's device perfectly when Preston knocked it down. Unknown to him, It was still recording, still uploading. The case wasn't just military-grade protection. It contained hidden microphones that could capture whispers from 20 feet away. Technology that turned every conversation into admissible evidence. Product placement. The military-grade phone case with hidden recording capabilities represents the kind of protection and documentation tools available to those facing harassment. Preston's control snapped. His hand shot out, shoving Madison's shoulder hard enough to make her stumble backward. "You little—" He grabbed her by the jacket collar, pulling her close enough that she could see the rage burning in his eyes. "You think you're clever? You think you can come here and threaten me?" "I'm not threatening anyone," Madison said calmly, though her heart raced. "I'm just stating facts. 47 documented incidents of harassment, 3 dead students, 1 very interested detective who happens to be investigating a pattern of suspicious student deaths." She paused, letting each word sink in. "Your kingdom is built on fear, Preston. But fear only works when people have something left to lose. I already lost everything that mattered to me on May 4th, when my sister took her own life." The mention of specific dates wasn't random. Madison had memorized every significant moment, every turning point in Preston's reign of terror. March 15th, Jessica's dreams destroyed, along with her portfolio. April 22nd, Tommy's privacy violated beyond repair. May 3rd, the final messages that pushed Sophia over the edge. May 4th, the day Madison's world shattered and rebuilt itself around a single purpose. Jackson released his grip on Madison's arm, stepping back nervously. "Preston, man, there's too many people watching." The crowd had swelled to nearly 50 onlookers, a sea of phones documenting every second. Some were already live streaming, the confrontation spreading across social media in real time. "Let them watch," Preston snarled, his carefully maintained image crumbling. "Let them see what happens to people who don't know their place." He raised his knee in one violent motion, the same move he'd perfected on the football field. The impact caught Madison square in the face, the force sending her crashing to the pavement. Blood exploded from her nose, hot and immediate. The crowd gasped in horror, some screaming, others frozen in shock. Madison's head bounced against the concrete, her vision blurring. Through the pain and disorientation, she could hear Preston's heavy breathing above her, could see his Nike sneaker hovering as if considering whether to strike again. But even through the blood and pain, Madison smiled. Because everything, the location, the witnesses, the cameras, the confession about 3 students, the assault itself, had gone exactly according to plan. 6 months of preparation had led to this moment. Preston Maxwell had just committed felony assault in front of 50 witnesses and multiple cameras while confessing to driving 3 students to suicide. 10, 9, 8, Madison whispered through bloody lips, her countdown finally making sense. She'd called 911 12 minutes ago, leaving the line open so they could hear everything. She'd timed it perfectly, knowing exactly how long it would take for them to respond to an assault in progress at the central bus station. 7, 6, 5. Her voice grew stronger despite the pain. Preston stood frozen above her, suddenly realizing something was very wrong. The confident predator who'd ruled through fear was beginning to understand that he'd walked into a carefully constructed trap. 4, 3, 2. Madison's hand moved to her pocket, pulling out a second phone, a backup she'd kept hidden. On its screen was a timer counting down, synchronized with something Preston couldn't see but was about to experience. 1. The sirens were already audible, growing louder as multiple police cars converged on the bus station. Madison's smile widened through the blood. Did you really think I'd face you without a plan? Did you think Sophia's sister would be that stupid? The first police car screeched to a halt, Officer Bradley emerging with his hand on his holster. He took in the scene, Madison on the ground bleeding, Preston standing over her with blood on his shoe, 50 witnesses with phones raised. The calculation was instant and obvious. Step away from her. Now. Officer Bradley's voice carried the authority of someone who'd seen enough violence to recognize an assault in progress. Preston stumbled backward, his face draining of color as reality crashed through his privileged bubble. "This is a misunderstanding," Preston started, but Jackson grabbed his arm, shaking his head frantically. Derek had already lowered his phone, suddenly realizing he'd been documenting evidence of a felony. Madison pushed herself up on one elbow, blood still streaming from her nose. "Officer Bradley," she said clearly, ensuring everyone could hear, "I want to press charges for assault. I have 6 months of documented harassment leading up to this attack." She reached into her jacket with her free hand, pulling out a flash drive sealed in an evidence bag. "Everything's here. Time-stamped. Verified." 2 more patrol cars arrived, followed by an ambulance. Paramedics rushed to Madison, while officers began taking statements from witnesses. The elderly man who'd been reading his newspaper approached Officer Bradley directly. "I saw everything," he said firmly. "That boy attacked her without provocation. Kicked her in the face while she was standing peacefully." Preston's world was collapsing in real time. His phone buzzed incessantly. The video was already spreading across social media. Someone had tagged Westbrook Academy, the local news stations, even Princeton, where Preston had already been accepted for early admission. Each notification was another crack in the perfect future his family had purchased for him. "You set me up," Preston said, his voice hollow as he stared at Madison being loaded onto a stretcher. "This whole thing was a trap." Madison turned her head, meeting his eyes one last time before the ambulance doors closed. "No, Preston. You set yourself up the day you decided my sister's life was worth less than your ego. I just made sure the world would see it." The specially designed smartwatch on Madison's wrist had been recording throughout the entire confrontation. Not just audio and video, but biometric data, heart rate patterns that showed Preston's excitement spiking during the attack, the kind of physiological evidence that proved intent and premeditation. The data synced automatically with the prosecutor's office, part of a pilot program for documenting assault cases. Preston didn't know it yet, but his own body had testified against him. Product placement: the medical-grade smartwatch with biometric recording capabilities that can provide crucial evidence in assault cases. At Westbrook General Hospital, Madison's mother sat beside her bed while doctors reset her broken nose. Detective Sarah Morgan had arrived within minutes of the 911 call, not as Madison's mother, but as the lead investigator on a case involving suspicious student deaths at Westbrook Academy. The relationship had been carefully hidden for 6 months to avoid any appearance of bias. "You could have told me," Sarah said quietly, holding her daughter's hand. "When you found Sophia's real suicide note, the one the school tried to hide. You could have let me handle it officially." Madison squeezed back, her voice muffled by bandages. "The system failed Sophia. Failed Jessica and Tommy, too. The school buried everything, paid off families, made it all go away. I needed Preston to confess publicly, needed him to attack me where everyone could see. Now, they can't hide it anymore." Her phone, miraculously undamaged in its military case, buzzed with notifications. The video had reached 10 million views in 3 hours. News vans were already surrounding Westbrook Academy. Principal Mitchell was holding an emergency press conference, trying to distance the school from Preston's actions, but reporters were asking hard questions about the 3 student deaths. Preston sat in a holding cell at the county jail, his designer clothes replaced with orange coveralls. His father's lawyers had arrived within an hour, but even they looked concerned. The evidence was overwhelming. Multiple angles of video, 57 witness statements, Madison's documented harassment, and most damaging of all, Preston's own words about the 3 students who aren't around anymore. Jackson and Derek had been brought in for questioning. Faced with potential conspiracy charges, they broke within minutes. Jackson revealed the group chat where they'd planned their attacks on vulnerable students. Derek handed over his phone with hundreds of videos documenting Preston's previous assaults, kept as trophies of their conquests. But the real breakthrough came when Ashley Chen walked into the police station at 8:45 p.m. Ashley had survived Preston's campaign against her the previous year, but barely. She'd transferred schools, changed her name, tried to disappear. But seeing Madison's video, watching someone finally stand up to Preston with evidence and determination, had given her the courage to come forward. "I have recordings," Ashley said, placing an old phone on Detective Morgan's desk. "Preston didn't know, but I recorded our last conversation. The one where he told me exactly how he was going to destroy me and how he'd done it to others before." Her hands shook as she pushed the phone forward. "He names Jessica Martinez, says she was practice for what he planned to do to me." The recording was clear, Preston's voice unmistakable as he detailed his methods. The fake photos, the coordinated harassment, the systematic isolation that pushed vulnerable students past their breaking point. He even laughed about Jessica's parents accepting the school's condolence payment to stay quiet about their doubts. By midnight, Preston Maxwell was facing charges that would destroy everything his family had built. Assault and battery, criminal harassment, conspiracy, and with the new evidence, 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter for the deaths of Jessica Martinez, Tommy Rodriguez, and Sophia Brooks. Madison was released from the hospital the next morning, her nose bandaged, but her spirit unbroken. She stood on the steps of the courthouse as Preston was arraigned, watching him shuffle in chains between 2 officers. The golden boy who'd ruled through fear now looked small and frightened, finally understanding what it meant to be powerless. The courtroom was packed with reporters, students, and most importantly, the families of Jessica, Tommy, and Sophia. Madison sat in the front row, wearing her sister's bracelet and holding the original suicide note, the real one that Sophia had hidden in their shared childhood hiding spot, not the sanitized version the school had presented to authorities. Preston pled not guilty, his lawyers arguing entrapment and provocation. But when the judge reviewed the evidence, particularly the biometric data showing Preston's physiological excitement during his attacks, bail was denied. Preston Maxwell would await trial in custody, no longer protected by wealth and connections. Westbrook Academy crumbled within weeks. An FBI investigation revealed years of covered-up incidents, bribed officials, and destroyed evidence. Principal Mitchell was arrested for obstruction of justice. 3 board members resigned in disgrace. The school's prestigious reputation evaporated as more victims came forward, emboldened by Madison's courage. Madison became an inadvertent symbol, her story spreading far beyond Westbrook. She testified before the state legislature about the need for stronger anti-bullying laws and mandatory reporting requirements. The Madison-Brooks Law passed unanimously, requiring schools to maintain independent documentation of all harassment claims and making it a felony to destroy or suppress such evidence. 6 months later, Preston Maxwell was convicted on all charges. The judge, reading the victim impact statements from 3 grieving families, sentenced him to 15 years in prison. As guards led him away, Preston looked back at Madison one last time. She didn't smile or gloat. She simply nodded. One small gesture of closure for the sister she'd lost, and the justice she'd found. But justice, Madison had learned, was never quite complete. Standing outside the courthouse after the sentencing, she noticed someone watching from across the street. A young woman with short black hair and a barely visible scar along her jawline. Their eyes met for a moment, and the woman raised her phone slightly, not recording, but showing something on the screen. A photo of another young man in a Westbrook Letterman jacket, someone Madison recognized as Preston's cousin from Eastbrook Prep, 2 towns over. Madison understood immediately. Preston wasn't unique. He was part of a pattern, a culture that protected predators and silenced victims. The woman nodded once, then disappeared into the crowd. But her message was clear. The fight wasn't over. That evening, Madison sat in her dorm room at State University, finally able to begin the life that had been on hold since Sophia's death. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, exhausted from months of threats and harassment from Preston's supporters. But something made her open it. The message contained a single photo. A memorial wall at another prep school, covered with pictures of smiling students. 3 of the faces had black ribbons across them. Recent deaths. All ruled suicides. At the bottom, a simple message. They called him Preston's protege. Madison stared at the message for a long time, feeling the familiar weight settling on her shoulders. She'd brought justice for Sophia, for Jessica, for Tommy. But how many others were out there, suffering in silence, waiting for someone to see their pain and refuse to look away? She thought about the woman with the scar, about the 3 new faces with black ribbons, about all the Preston Maxwells still walking free. Her finger hovered over the delete button. She could walk away, focus on her own healing, let someone else fight the next battle. Instead, she typed a simple response. Send me everything you have. Some fights don't end with a single victory. They become a calling forged from tragedy and determination. Madison had learned justice wasn't a destination, but an ongoing journey requiring people willing to stand against predators hiding behind privilege. Her phone buzzed with a flood of documents, photos, witness statements from another school, another predator protected by another corrupt system. Madison opened her laptop, creating a folder labeled Case 2. Outside, students lived normal college lives. She envied them sometimes, these people who'd never weaponized their pain or turned tragedy into strategy. But Sophia's desperate plea echoed, "Don't let them do this to anyone else." Madison touched the silver bracelet, feeling the engraved letters. She began reading the new files, preparing for another battle. Because that's what survivors do. They survive, fight, and protect others from monsters they've already faced. The last message was different. No threats or evidence, just 5 words that would echo forever. Preston wasn't the only one.